If I was standing here 500 years ago in northern Scotland, speaking about feminine leadership and women standing for our future, I would probably be carted off, tried, and burned at the stake. Or if I was lucky, I might have been hung. The good news is that I would have Margaret and Stephanie and Deborah coming with me, and probably most of you too. So I'm celebrating tonight because I am standing here and we are here. And yet it does still feel like I'm standing in the center of the fire. And so there's a part of me that's feeling very honored and excited to be here, and there's also a part of me that's feeling quite terrified and wants to escape behind that black curtain right now. And it feels really important to share this with you because I want to give her space to be here, and if I don't, she's probably going to unwittingly sabotage the rest of my talk. So, in this last couple of months, as I've been preparing to stand in this space, I've been with voices of this younger, more vulnerable part of me. And she's been saying variations of the story, I'm not good enough, and I've got nothing of value to offer. So I've brought her with me tonight. She's a cast that my mother gave me when I was 30. It's a young girl, she's naked, and she's doing this. And I brought her with me so she can be seen and honored. Because she's not just part of my story, she's part of the collective narrative of women that it's time for us to acknowledge and transform. So I'm going to put her down on this little red TEDx rug tonight so that she's part of my circle and feels included. The only reason that I haven't run off behind that curtain is that I'm holding her. I'm giving her space to be present inside me, to be welcome. I'm present with the feelings that she carries without making them wrong, without shaming them, without telling her she should be feeling something else. And I'm learning to do that. I'm learning that when I hold myself, then I'm more present with myself. And when I'm more present with myself, then I'm more present with you. And this is where Rising Connected begins, with holding a loving space for ourselves in the face of whatever challenge we might meet when we feel called to step outside our comfort zone. And this is really important because there's something that women are waking up to, something very beautiful and powerful. And it's not that the men aren't waking up to something very beautiful and powerful too. But I've had the privilege over the last 15 years to listen to the stories of many women from different walks of life about the inner and outer journeys of their leadership. And so I want to share some of my own experience, my personal experience, but also what I've been hearing about the collective experience of women. Women who feel called to make a difference in the world. And what's waking up has been happening for many years. It's not new, but there's something being accelerated and amplified at the moment because of the profound challenges that we're facing right now in our world. Climate change probably being one of the most all-pervasive of a very long list of potential triggers, shall we say. And you'll probably be very glad to know that I'm not here with a 7-step solution to this, but I have got a vision, and it's a vision that I think women are waking up to. And it's a vision of women rising connected to our authentic feminine wisdom and our courage to take a loving stand for the future that we want to create for our grandchildren. And it's not a vision of redomination. It's a vision where the women honor and stand beside the men and play our part, our essential part, in restoring the very out-of-balance culture of the world that we live in, where feminine principles and values continue to be suppressed, misrepresented, devalued, and even shamed, and where the masculine gets blamed for it. It's not a vision about getting more women into the boardroom, because although it's really important, it's not those statistics alone that guarantee a change in culture. It's energy that changes culture. So this is about women in all walks of life finding the courage to stand for what really matters by connecting with the most powerful thing that we have inside us, which is our fierce love for the birthing and protection of life. What we're waking up to, I feel, is a deep calling to reclaim the deep-rooted wisdom of our womanhood and bring that wisdom shamelessly forward through our feminine leadership, whatever that looks like, whether it's in our families or our communities or our businesses. The writer Anais Nin has a really beautiful metaphor for this. She said, "And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." And it feels like such a powerful metaphor, because it describes so perfectly and beautifully what I'm always hearing women saying they want their leadership to be about, which is, I want to be more authentic. I want to bring my voice into the world. I want to be the real me. But it also describes the pain, the challenge. I feel like I'm hiding. I'm not expressing myself. I'm not bringing my voice forward. I'm not sharing the gift that I'm really here to share. Being in my authenticity feels too scary. Why? Because we're still carrying the voice. I'm not enough to be a leader. Stepping into my power, speaking from my power, feels too scary. I believe that being seen is one of the most significant challenges that we face as women, not just in finding our authentic voices, but in bringing them forward through our leadership as women. Because blossoming, by its very nature, requires us to open. And opening means that we become vulnerable. Because we start to feel what's been dumbed down and suppressed, unexpressed. And what's been unexpressed isn't just the voice of our love and our wisdom. It's the voice of our fear and our shame and our rage and our grief. And our culture has taught us that these things are ugly and unwelcome, unlike the good, pretty little girl that we've been conditioned to be in order to belong. So what happens when we start to open to the gift that we feel inspired to bring through our leadership? Everything that's been keeping us in lockdown starts to surface. And what's our conditioned response to that? To stuff it back down again, so we can't feel it? Or we project it out there, we blame everything out there for how we're feeling inside here. And either way, we're not really connected to what's going on inside us. The problem with this is that those unacknowledged and unheld emotions end up in the leadership driving seat of our lives. And our wisdom goes unheard. And this is where the inner patriarchy plays out, where we resuppress the feminine in ourselves. So what we're waking up to isn't just our deep desire to blossom. It's the wounding of our past. It's not showing up, this wounding's not showing up because it wants to get in our way. It's showing up because it's crying out to be felt and seen and heard and held and healed. Some of what arises is the unresolved trauma from our personal childhoods. But some of it is the intergenerational trauma that we have had in our past, and it's been handed down from generation to generation. And what I'm learning is that whenever I have to step forward or feel called to step forward as a leader and bring my voice forward more fully, I'm learning I need to be with and hold whatever surfaces. Hold it with love so that I can feel, have a bit more space to feel and to express and act on my love rather than my fear. So you might want to just take a moment to feel what's going on for you. Put your hands on your body right now and just notice what's happening inside you as you listen to this. I believe this is where our courage as feminine leaders really lies, in rising connected to ourselves, learning how to really love ourselves so that we can actually stand for ourselves and bring our voices forward. So how do we really resource ourselves to do this? I think we can learn a lot from how our indigenous ancestors lived. I was very privileged to spend quite a number of years working with native earth wisdom teachers in New Mexico. And it opened my eyes to how some of the old earth wisdom cultures used to live in harmony with nature. And the principle that these old cultures held, and that was really an integral part of their teachings, is that all life is sacred. That as human beings, we're connected to nature, to the earth, not separate from it or superior to it. And in this connection, they had access to a vast field of wisdom and intelligence beyond themselves. And I remember sitting on a rock, overlooking a vast and stunning canyon, and reciting this mantra to myself: all life is sacred. And I felt a deep connection to the flowers and the trees and the earth and the sky. And in that moment, I realized that actually I had been so disconnected, not just from myself, but from all life around me. And I remember feeling possibly for the very first time that I belonged. That I belonged to this earth, that I had a place, and that life was supporting me. And I felt my sacredness because I felt my connection to the earth, and I felt held by her. So I invite you to just take a moment, and I need to put this down, and to just bring your hands together in front of your heart and take a moment just to connect with the earth beneath your feet and the sky above your head. And the space, the energy in the room. This is rising connected to life, knowing that we belong to something much greater than ourselves and that we're held and loved by Mother Life herself. Everything and everyone in this relationship is enough. Each time I returned from being steeped in nature in New Mexico, I would come home, and after a couple of weeks, my mantra had turned into, all life is sacred except me. And I had begun to sort of fall back into the voice of, I'm not enough. Why? Because I had come back into a culture that wasn't actually supporting the transformation that was taking place inside me. It wasn't supporting the bud that wanted to blossom. This is where our female ancestors really had it sussed. They knew that in order to keep their spirits bright and sustain their well-being, they had to stay connected to one another. So whether you were a healer or a witch or a grandmother, if you were a woman, you probably had a powerful circle of women to support you in every area of your life. And there were men's circles and mixed circles too. But the women's work was about connecting with the earth and strengthening their relationship to the feminine. At that time in my life, I had already felt called to work with women leaders. I'd had a very difficult experience in an official leadership role that I was in a very masculine-dominated culture, and I found it very hard to bring my voice and my leadership forward, even though it was actually a business that I'd co-founded. And I felt very isolated, and I wanted to create the support, the resourcing for other women that I hadn't had in that experience. So I began to invite women leaders to come into circles in nature where they would feel safe and held to really show up as they were and to really be honest about what was going on for them. And I discovered straight away that when women come together in circles, a very important myth gets bust. The myth that I'm alone. The myth that we're alone in our sense of unworthiness, the only ones that are feeling victimized, and that we're the only ones that have a voice and a vision and something that's crying out to blossom. And in that space of connection, everything relaxes. The stories about their not enoughness don't seem so loud because they're being heard and acknowledged. The feelings don't have such a tight grip on us because they're being felt and honoured. Tears are more than welcome. And the joy and the power of who we really are begins to birth because we're being truly seen. So take a moment to just turn to someone next to you and connect with them. This is rising connected to one another. And it's critical because if we want to play our part in changing the culture out there, we need to birth a new culture in here. And if we want to birth a new culture in here, then we need to create the environment out there that supports us in creating the environment in here so we can blossom. The Buddhists have called it right association, having the people around you that see and encourage your light, but that also welcome your shadow with tenderness. As I continued over the years to invite women into circles and wisdom councils, I began to realize something even more exciting, that when we come together in a circle, we're not just discovering our own wisdom, we're discovering our collective wisdom. And that collective wisdom is what emerges through the connection between us. This is the true power of feminine wisdom. It's not coming from us, it's coming through us. Every time that I sit in a circle, I'm moved to the core by the courage of the women who show up and share their feelings with such depth and authenticity and courage to really show what's going on. I feel that when this happens, we're kind of lending ourselves to life, turning ourselves inside out, so that life can actually come through us. This isn't something that we can ever really prepare for. It's there, and if we're open to it, it will emerge, it will come through. So, when we allow this to come through, we find that instead of bringing our ungrounded fear and rage into the world, there's already enough of that, we can bring what's really being called for, which is our fierce love for life. It's time for the women's voices to be heard, for our pain to be felt, for our wisdom to be acknowledged, and for the love to be shared. It's time to reclaim the power of our womanhood and to take a stand as the mothers and the bearers of life so that we can blossom in our authentic beauty and birth a new future into being. So the next time that you feel called to do this and you feel yourself doing this, then remember that you can rise connected here to yourself, and here to life, and here to one another. I'd like to close with a quote from Kurt Kaltrider from his book American Indian Prophecies. "And an elder from my father's tribe said, 'The honor of the people lies in the moccasin tracks of the women. Walk the good road. Be strong with the warm heart of earth. Be strong and sing the strength of the great powers within you and all around you. We must heed women's wisdom, for it is of the earth. And we must support the mothers and the grandmothers for their own sake, for the welfare of the children, and for the survival of the earth. In this time of choice, where the future of the planet hangs in the balance. Thank you.